Now, although it's early days, Arsenal sit top of the Premier League with 16 points and have had a very hard schedule. Now, in this video, we're going to analyse why it feels different this season throughout the Arsenal team and ultimately why it feels like this genuinely could be the year they win the Premier League title. So let's get into it. Now, of course, I'm not going to lie to you and pretend that the last couple of years I haven't predicted Arsenal to win the league, and arguably, other than last year with the mitigating factors that happened outside our control, I think undoubtedly in the 23-24 season we were the best team in the country and we didn't win through multiple other reasons, which I don't really think is our fault. Now, despite that, if you look at the points tally over the last couple of years, Arsenal had the most but have 0 Premier League titles. I do think this comes down to timing, which Arteta has spoke about multiple times, but our job isn't to sit here and complain. It is to find a way to not make that timing bad for us and end up winning the Premier League title, which accumulates in this season. Now, although Arsenal have had a difficult schedule, you would argue, on data it does suggest that Liverpool have actually had just a little bit of a harder one. This is because they played Chelsea away last weekend, which just pipped them to that position, but still Arsenal have done well with the games that they have played to be in their position, and arguably if they played how they have been in the last couple of weeks, I think they probably would have got points in games, especially against Liverpool, which we saw before, but ultimately that wasn't the case. Now, one of the main things that I think going into this season, looking at Arsenal and watching the team, is that there is so much more options, there's so much more willingness to rotate, and they don't seem so hell-bent on having certain players play every game dependent on injuries. You've seen Odegaard be injured 3 times this season, Saka's been out for 3 to 4 games as well, and just with these 2 players being out last season, Arsenal were a shell of the team that they were, especially with someone like Kai Havertz not in the team as well. Now, obviously, we all know Arsenal spent a lot of money. They bought 8 players in to make sure this issue wasn't a thing, but it hasn't stopped the injury problems. You know, Madueke's been injured, Saliba's had his problems, and backup players such as Hincapié and Norgard have barely been in the team because of these injury problems, which means Arsenal have had to rotate and find solutions, which includes still playing Marino up front, Martinelli out on the right, or even Max Dowman coming into the team. Now, this year, Arsenal, in my opinion, are the most adaptable and flexible team in the Premier League. Last year, there was a lot of talk about how when Arsenal created high turnovers, they were getting a low amount of shots from them and a low amount of goals because of that. And ultimately, it felt like when them counter-attacking situations happened, the team being more direct, it really didn't favour them. Now, this season, if you look at direct attack stats in the Premier League, which is an attack which 50% or more of the passes are going forward, so it's a very front-footed attack, Arsenal sits second in the league and have actually had 14 so far, and despite only scoring 1 goal, it is quite clear that the shooting has improved a lot. Another stat that backs up this more direct approach is the fact that Arsenal are just shooting a lot more. In the start of the season, there was definitely games, I think that Liverpool one, where they didn't have as many shots as you would want, but since then, especially since the City game, Arsenal have really turned it up a notch. Eze has a lot of shots in games. Gyökeres is having games where he has 5 or 6 shots. I know that hasn't been consistent, but I'm sure that's the plan. And everyone is kind of in a way where they're a lot more willing to shoot when they get into the box, not hesitant to make a chance, which sometimes still happens, but not as bad as last year. Now, we know that this direct approach and style to Arsenal has still developed and has taken some teething issues to get into the flow of it working. We saw against United the first game of the season, there was a lot of attacks, 3-on-3, even 3-on-2, which Arsenal just didn't take. Odegaard's passes were poor, Martinelli's running was poor, and Gyökeres didn't really know what he was doing on his first game. Now, since then, there has definitely been a change though. Arsenal have done a lot of big attacks, especially against certain opponents where they go long very quickly and get in behind, but more importantly, within 3 or 4 passes are through, which is just such a big difference, which we saw a couple of years ago. Now, a key point that I just mentioned is that Arsenal only really do this against certain teams that press them a lot. We saw this against Olympiacos because Olympiacos came at the Emirates and were very brave, so Arsenal broke them down by playing the ball backwards and then playing an incisive pass to get through within about 3 passes. And we saw the same against Forest when they haphazardly tried to press Arsenal, where Calafiori plays that ball over the top and we put it into the box, which ends up getting Gyökeres that goal that he needed. Now, this hasn't been a consistent for Arsenal in every game, and this is why I think they're the most adaptable team. Against teams that want to sit a lot deeper, i.e. Man City against Arsenal, Newcastle, or West Ham in the recent game, Arsenal are much more willing to go back to their slow approach which we saw before, but find different answers. In these games, you much more see Arsenal focus on central access passing. Trossard comes in, I think that's why he's been a big part of these teams. You've got Zubimendi making these inside decisive passes, and Eze kind of floating around in these areas, give Arsenal that more central access and be more braver. You see Calafiori play as a winger for sometimes and go wherever he wants, and you also see Timber be able to play on that wing as well, and Arsenal putting their foot on the throttle in these games. But games such as like a Leeds or a Nottingham Forest, for instance, it wasn't really like that. They did kind of try and press Arsenal at times. They both didn't come to the Emirates to sit deep the entire time, but Arsenal gained possession like they did for more older games and decided to play a lot more wing play in these areas. That's where they could get their one-on-ones quickly with that new incisive passes of quickly putting the ball out wide, and this gave Arsenal a lot of chances from crosses, from corners, which they ended up scoring from. And obviously as the game develops, they got loads of chances in different ways. And I don't want to take it for granted, but the adaptation for Arsenal in these sort of games that we've seen has been quite dramatic. Against Liverpool, we played exactly how we did last season, a conservative approach you could argue, but at least an approach that didn't really want to score until we conceded from a worldie, and then straight away we started getting a lot more pressure at the end of the game. And since then, Arteta has definitely been burnt. He's definitely been a lot more trustworthy of Eze playing in that midfield position while Odegaard's injured, but we've found ways to work with both of them in the team. We've found ways to work with Waneri and Eze, and now we've found ways to work with Eze and Trossard. Multiple players for multiple positions that constantly come in to give us something different, which is very important. And if you look at a lot of the attacking stats this season for Arsenal, there's definitely games where Arsenal have struggled more to create these chances, and set pieces obviously still a big thing. But we were talking about a month ago, can they create over 1 XG in these games in the Premier League? Now, there's actually 3 games in a row they have: Newcastle, West Ham and Olympiacos. Now, these may seem as maybe not the highest games that you're going to play, but let's not forget, Arsenal lost away to Newcastle and at home to West Ham last season. So these are games they needed to regain points, which they lost in that title race last year, and games they needed to find a solution to break down these mid-block teams, and which Arsenal, yes, may have won the game from a corners or a set piece here or there. Ultimately, if you watch the game, the amount of chances that Arsenal create in multiple different ways, Woklz coming out wide, playing it with the players, Woklz getting in the box, Eze having shots inside the box as well. Arsenal had enough chances in these games to win comfortably, and in the end, they did get wins in both of them. Obviously, one was more comfortable than the other. And the main thing is, this is without a fully fit Saka, who has definitely been getting there. I think in these games he's played a lot better. Odegaard's been injured and out for this team, and Havertz, a major part of this press that we have and the system to keep the ball and progress it, hasn't been needed. I think there's a lot of players for that. I think Zubimendi, Eze and Woklz have all done brilliant things that have helped this team, but it's a constant that Arsenal are changing their setup, which is not what I see with other teams who may or may not still have big problems, which obviously we still do, but I think at least mitigate them a little bit more. And the big constant with all of this is that Arsenal's defense is still incredible. Only conceded 3 goals this season, and a lot of the goals are ultimately just flukes. You know, you got Gabriel trying to get a foul against Woklz. We got an insane worldy free kick, and Erling Haaland, when we tried to go out, we made a mistake and he went one-on-one and scored. These aren't from constant build-ups that you see all the time, and you wouldn't expect these sort of chances to consistently be a problem. Some teams concede the same amount of goals all the time, and we're just not that team. We barely concede and our defense is solid. And when you have that consistent defense, which you've had for years, you can rely on the attack to give you something in them areas, which we finally are, and it's really becoming a present in this team. And many people have spoken about it. It genuinely feels like in every single game Arsenal play, you don't know what tactical instructions that they're going to have and how they're going to play. There is games that Arsenal don't even need the ball to be effective, but there's games that we mostly do. And even people like Trossard to Martinelli to Eze to Odegaard, every single player has their own tactical implications and their own different style. I don't think Arsenal ever need to be in a situation where we have one front 11. We had the starting 11 over the last couple of years, and as soon as 1 or 2 of them cogs get injured, we have seen what it's like. It's been an absolute pain to get results, even if we end up getting a lot of results in them time. But now it feels like if this player isn't the right for the game, he doesn't play. If this player isn't fully fit, we don't have to risk him. You know, you see Gabriel coming off with a slight knock for Mascara, who's showed his ability. And I look at a lot of the rivals that Arsenal have, which we all knew before the start of the season, but Liverpool don't have many centre-back options they're playing. Man City have injury problems. Rodri, we still don't know what's going on with him. And we've obviously got our injury problems ourselves, but it just hasn't been that bad because we've still been able to play at an extremely high level. And yes, the team is not perfect. I think we all would probably want a better left winger than Trossard starting every game, but I like how he's being used right now. I think we all want Martinelli to be used centrally, which he just isn't. Marino is still, while Marino has played quite a lot this season, which I know would be a big disappointment, at least from the start. But 2 months into the season and 7 games in the league, we are really in a good position. And, you know, we're actually 1 point less than we got last year at this point, but I do think we had a harder schedule. But every team this season will drop points quite a lot. I think that the quality in the Prem, that anyone can beat anyone on a given day, will be prevalent. And I think the big thing about Arsenal is just that the team feels so much more free, so much more fun, and it doesn't feel like we're watching the same boring, slow build-up play all the time, trying to break down the same oppositions. There's obviously games that we are a little bit more timid, especially early on, but as the game opens up, we get better. And Arteta has spoke about multiple times finishes being a key point, and I think we have the biggest ability to have finishers within the team. We have the best depth, I think. We have players that can come off the bench and offer difference, which we have constantly seen with players off the bench scoring goals all the time. And I think that finishes is what makes Arsenal feel different as well. And obviously, I'm an optimistic fan, but genuinely going into the season, I was optimistic even more. And watching the team play and adapt every week, especially since Eze's come in, has been an absolute joy. It doesn't feel like the same as we thought it did a little bit in pre-season. Now, let me know in the comments what you guys think. I love to hear what you guys say. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one.